Do you have a freedom number? Most people plan to retire to 65. Others obsess over the net worth that lets us walk away from a life of forced work. But nearly half of Americans are pushed out earlier than planned due to layoffs or health. On the flip side, 1 in 8 end up returning to work, not because they ran out of money, but because they prepared for the end of a job, but not the beginning of a life. Today on Escape the Clock, we are flipping the script. We stop retiring, which implies retreating, and we start graduating. Stay tuned for the specific defense protocols you need to fortify your financial castle so that when you leave the workforce, it is finally on your terms. Welcome back to Escape the Clock, the show where we highlight strategies and approaches for achieving your financial freedom and having the option not to work. I'm your host, Daniel C. Rogers. There's this classic program manager's dilemma called the day 2 problem. No matter how well your project goes, things can easily fall apart after you succeed. The accumulation phase goes great. We build these great projects, we run them, we track KPIs, manage budgets, and eventually hit the launch date. But then the decumulation phase starts, the operation phase, where the plan ends and our success can easily fall apart. We build the castle, but we forget to build the lifestyle inside it and the moat around it to protect it. And in my experience, the thing that sends people back to work isn't usually a lack of savings. It's an unforeseen risk that wasn't on their risk log, the identity crisis. They have the financial capital to survive, but they lack the mental preparedness to thrive without the structure of a job. So how do we shift from playing offense to playing defense to secure our freedom and our purpose forever? Today's guest is here to help us figure that out. He believes that retirement shouldn't be a cessation of life, but a promotion. Eric Brotman is the CEO of BFG Financial Advisors and a veteran certified financial planner who has dedicated his career to financial literacy. He served as an appointee to the Board of Trustees for the Maryland State Retirement and Pension System, and he is the author of Don't Retire, Graduate, as well as the host of the Don't Retire, Graduate podcast. Eric, welcome to Escape the Clock.
Daniel, I love the way you frame that. It's great to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. Eric, you said the word retirement is part of the problem. I love that. Can you take us back to the moment you realized that traditional definition was broken?
Well, I've been spending over the last 3+ decades time working with folks who have reached that magical retirement age. And it's funny. It's like the unicorn. You search for it your entire working life, and then you get there and you're like, now what? There's an unbelievable disconnect. And I started with the simplest exercise. I looked up the word in the dictionary. I know that sounds old school, but I'm old enough that I can get away with that. And to retire, if you think about it, the English language started, of course, in the UK, not here or Great Britain. And to retire is to go to sleep. And that's what I feel like we're doing. I feel like we're having this wonderful, amazing life, building this vitae and this resume and this network of humans and becoming important in our own worlds and our own industries. And then we just say, I'm done, I quit, and it's daytime TV and shuffleboard and maybe occasional golf. That's brutal. No one should do it.
Yeah, retire is like to go out to pasture, I think, was one thing I saw.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, I don't feel like that's what I did.
Yeah. I think retirement needs to be framed as the absence of needing to work, not the absence of work itself. If you reach financial independence, whether you're 44 or 74 when you get there, if you reach financial independence, you can arguably do anything you want. But you need to have those things, and it has to be more than a bucket list, Daniel. It can't just be, I want to visit the Taj Mahal and Mount Rushmore. It's got to be more than that, or you'll check them off and then wonder what to do. So I do think there's a necessity to have passion and purpose in your life, and that's why I consider it a graduation, because a graduation is, in fact, the end of a program. It's the end of high school or the end of college or the end of some other program. But it's also celebratory in that it's a new beginning. It's a launch pad to the next great thing. So, I would hate to see it be the last launch pad. Like, to what?
You define it as moving towards something. Yeah. Can you go a little bit deeper into why treating financial independence as a graduation changes how someone would prepare for it?
Well, I think you need to figure out not only what you're going to be doing, but sort of who you want to be when you grow up. And some of the things you're going to be doing will require capital. Some of them won't. And so if there are things that you want to do, if you're passionate about philanthropy, if you're passionate about travel, if you're passionate about all kinds of different projects, if you want to do consulting, whatever it is, you've got to be moving towards that. And you have to make sure that you're not just unplugging. So having a plan is more than just the math. The math is arguably middle school math. It's algebra at best. This isn't a math problem. It's a human behavioral and psychology problem, and that's a much deeper conversation.
Completely agree. I was going through, I've read a lot of books at this point, financial books, and yours, your framework is so similar, maybe the most similar to how at least I thought about it. I was a project manager though. And so I probably don't think like maybe normal people that are thinking about things like financial freedom. You talk about important milestones as a way to get to your goals and things like that. I was really curious, like, do you see it like a program? Do you have a background in program management? Where did that inspiration come from?
I have no background in project management, but I'm a lifetime learner. So I have been through 12 or so graduate programs, certificate programs. I'm still reinventing myself academically, intellectually, in all the ways that I know how. This year I did a program on financial behavior keynotes. Next year I'm doing one on public speaking. I'm also doing one on sort of whole person meditation and finding different level of as a financial advisor specifically. So I'm trying to continue to grow. Arthur Brooks wrote an amazing book. If you've read From Strength to Strength, if you've not read it, put it on your short list. It is an amazing way to frame what we're doing as we change from our intelligence curve to our wisdom curve. And it's a really interesting piece because when you're 25 or 30, it's all about what you just learned. It's all about the textbook. It's all about having the right answer, which more and more computers have done for us. But nonetheless, that was the thing. It was about knowing the rules, knowing the way it works, having the right answer, and having it at the tip of your tongue. People, as they get into their 40s, 50s, 60s, and beyond, are less likely to know that stuff. And arguably, it's because it becomes less important to us. Now we're trading on wisdom, the experience to say, that might be what the math problem says, but here's what really happens when someone loses a loved one, a spouse, a parent, a job. I mean, when life changes on you, it's not academic, it's personal.
Well, as someone who's graduated so many times, you probably have a strong sense of what graduation means. So many times, though, graduation is kind of this little bit of a celebration, but then we end up kind of moving to another chapter, taking knowledge with us, but leaving the rest behind in a way, right? We kind of trying to look at that next chapter. In a traditional retirement, people feel like they're leaving their identity behind so much of the time.
Yes.
How do people deal with that identity crisis that they have?
Well, it starts by answering a really important question, which is, tell me about yourself. Who are you? If the first thing you say is, I'm an engineer, I'm an architect, I'm a project manager, then you're identifying almost entirely who you are with what you do. That's your day job. But I would argue you have a lot more roles. Maybe you're a husband, maybe you're a father, maybe you're a hockey fan, maybe you're a gardener or a cyclist. You have lots of other things. And so when I see folks on LinkedIn and they change their profile from project manager, vice president of yada yada to retired, if it said deceased, I would not be any less interested in connecting with that human at that point. You've really just given up. And, you mentioned something about the fact that each graduation is an end, but it's also this step into the unknown. The happiest high schoolers I know are the people who finish their senior year having already gotten into college or some program they're going to. The happiest college students I know or apprenticeship programs I know are the people who finish, but they've already got a job lined up. The ones who finish and then say, oh my gosh, now what? They're the deer in the headlights. And it's a difficult thing. I know some people are planners and some people aren't. And I'm a planner. I want to know what's next. I want to know what my next adventure is, not because I'm trying to rush through this one. It's not about saying, I can't wait until then, or I can't wait until then. I think it's okay to enjoy the now and enjoy everything about it, but also know that there's a now plus one coming, whatever it is.
Yeah, if you're excited about that next chapter, you're going to really celebrate that milestone in a bigger way. A lot of that anxiety and that uncertainty and ambiguity, it's gone. In your work, you talk about financial triage. And I love the way you do this. This is very cool. So you talk about you have to triage this and really get in there almost surgically. And as a program manager, I really rely on like systems and things to manage complexity, because the whole idea of being a really great project manager is you're really taking something very ambiguous and difficult, and you're breaking it down and you're disambiguating it and you're getting rid of the complexity, and you have to use systems and protocols and stuff to do that. If someone's listening right now and they feel that their financial life is a bit chaotic, how would you help them? What's that specific pre-retirement curriculum or order of operations that would help them stop the bleeding and start making real progress towards building the wealth they need to be able to celebrate that big milestone that they should be working towards?
The first step of any journey is figuring out where you are. It's the "you are here" sticker on the kiosk before you figure out where to take that turn or what have you. So I think the first step for anyone at any stage of their financial lives is inventory. Take inventory of where you are and be really honest with yourself. If you're married or have a significant other, really honest with him or her. Be transparent, because if you lie to yourselves or your spouse or even a financial pro, you're wasting your time and your money and theirs. So be really thoughtful about saying, this is where we are or where I am, with open honesty. And then say, now, what are the steps that I need to take, and who are maybe the co-pilots I need to help me navigate? So what we do as CFPs is we are the primary care physician. We talk triage, you talk medicine. We are not necessarily the surgeons. We're the ones who are going to take a look at the body and say, all right, you need this doctor, and this doctor. Let's get them. And so, I can't say for sure that there's one thing to do first or another thing to do first, because every family, every situation is different. But I will say, in the simplest of terms, as a project manager, if you were to have a matrix with 4 boxes in it, and one axis was urgency and one axis was importance, some things that are urgent and important come first. Then there are things that are urgent but maybe not important that need to come quickly or be delegated quickly, so that you can focus on the important things. And anything in that box that's not urgent and not important truly should be last on the list. It's a rainy day project. It's not something we have to get to. And so you start to look at all the different components of a financial plan. You look at risk management and cash management and debt, and you look at insurances, and you look at investment portfolios, and you look at timelines, and you look at employee benefits and government benefits and all the various pieces, your taxes, your legal documents, your mortgages, your bank statements, all of the things. We've had folks show up at our office with like 2 suitcases, like 2 roller bags, and dump it on the conference table like it's an audit. Like, here you go, boom. But they have no idea what they've got. And the financial world is very complicated. The tax world is very complicated. I believe it's partially complicated due to acts of legislation that make it so, but there's also a complexity generated by the financial professionals who want to stay relevant. If the tax code was really simple and you could file with a postcard, you might not have a CPA. CPAs don't want that. I'm not picking on them. It's just a fact. So it's complicated. You need to speak the language. Imagine opening a game box of Monopoly, having never played it before, never seen it before, and just starting and hoping for the best. If you don't know what the rules are, or if you're playing with somebody who likes to make up new rules or change them, or house rules are, you do this, it's not going to be as much fun as if you understand the game. And money, to a great extent, is partly a game. The financial world, it's not always fun to play. It can be real hard, but if you know the rules, it helps.
Be very frustrating to play Monopoly without knowing the rules.
Imagine that. Imagine if you didn't know Boardwalk from Baltic, you'd be in deep trouble.
Oh, absolutely. You would not understand why you're getting behind and why you're struggling. Yeah. Advising so often is the soft skills of trying to redirect people towards where they need to start based on that triage a lot of the time. And I do notice that there's a lot of people, especially younger people now, who want to jump straight into investing.
Oh, yeah.
Right. The offense. How do you help someone in that situation understand that some of the more foundational elements like debt management or cash flow should be the area of operation they start with before they get to the stuff that they're excited to work on?
I try to paint it in terms people can readily grasp. Like, for example, you rarely pick out the window treatments before you pour the foundation for the new house, right? There are certain things that have to happen first. You have to have blocking and tackling before you can talk about the play you're going to run. Investing, while important, is arguably last. It is the last piece of that puzzle. It's the cherry on top. There are so many things that have to come first, because no matter what you're investing in or how you're doing it or how nice your portfolio looks, if you have wild personal debt, or if you don't have your other ducks in a row, you're undermining yourself. You're filling a bucket that's got holes in the bottom. And so I think it's really important to have a solid foundation, to have a solid structure, And when you get to the investments, and yes, I freely admit the investments are more fun to talk about. They're more fun to talk about at cocktail parties, at the water cooler, whatever. Everybody likes to say, oh, you guess what my 401k did? Nobody says, have you heard about this life insurance policy? It's awesome. No one's ever said that at a water cooler unless they'd had one too many. So I do think that it's what people want to talk about, especially young people. And it's been made worse by some of these online vendors that have gamified investing, where if you bought a stock, cha-ching, you get a gold star and a badge and all this stuff. They've gamified it, and it's not a game. As much as I just said, it's a game with rules. Investing is something you have to really understand, or you have to hire somebody who really understands it. And if anybody tells you that they're smarter than the market, they can time it, they can do all these things, run, because no one can. It's not possible.
Absolutely. Robinhood just added the ability to do shorts, and they gamify so much. It actually makes me very nervous. Things like that.
Yeah, of course. Well, what could go wrong by going into endless debt, bottomless?
Yeah. Not understanding how leverage works and then jumping into, Yeah, that scares me.
Yeah.
Let me ask you then, because, you did mention there's not a very difficult math problem here. Someone's following the advice, they're going through and they're doing the triage properly. Do you see kind of like a specific green light metric that you're looking at? Like, how do you help someone know, okay, you're actually pretty stable. Now you could start doing that thing you want to do now, which would be think about transition or maybe aggressively investing. Like, is there certain metrics that you like to look at?
I would say the first thing is your balance sheet has to be free of really adverse debt. And by adverse debt, I don't mean all debt. If you have a mortgage or you have leverage against a business or something that's an asset that's designed to grow, not so terrible generally. But if you have consumer debt, car notes, student loans, in most cases, I consider to be an abomination. The exception might be for professional schools where it really will buy you a better outcome. Undergraduate school is not worth borrowing six figures for. It's just not. And unfortunately, we've lost our way from that standpoint. But if you have really adverse debt, you've got to first fill that in. You can't build a mountain chart when you're starting in a hole. The next thing is you have to have positive cash flow. It doesn't matter how much money you make. Income and wealth are not the same thing. Income is what's coming in, but if your expenses are higher than your income, your wealth is going backwards. So thinking about having positive cash flow, just like a business. If you were running a business, you would want a P&L. You want your revenues to be greater than your expenses, so you had a profit. And same thing's true at the household level. And then it's about building a savings rate or investing rate that marries your objective for financial independence. So you're out of debt or adverse debt, at least. You've got positive cash flow. You've got more coming in than what's going out. Now, how much should you be saving or investing for the true long term, and how much should you be using to enjoy your life? Because I've seen too many people who save every penny and never live too. And there's, like anything else, there's a spectrum. To squirrel away every penny and never live is sad. To save nothing and live great and then one day wake up and you're living under a bridge is also not a great outcome. So there's something in between there, Daniel, right?
Absolutely.
And so I think figuring out, do you need to put away 10% or 15% or 30% of what you make into something? And when I say it's a simple math problem, one of the chapters in the book starts with the formula. And the formula actually looks very daunting. But the simple nature of this is if you put X dollars away every month for Y years and you get Z%, will become this figure. But then thinking about what that figure means, there are people right now who think if 20 years from now I can build a portfolio that's $1 million, I can retire comfortably. And the reality is $1 million, while a nice figure, probably only provides you with about $40,000 a year to live on. And I don't know too many people trying to save to $1 million who are comfortable living on $40,000 a year now. Imagine $40,000 a year 20 years from now, when that's equivalent to $15,000 today because of inflation. The number's going to be massive. And if you look at just the number, if you're 26 years old and you're listening to this and you're going, how much do I need? If I were to tell you $10 million, you'd panic. But that might be the answer. And it's not impossible over 40 years given the right behaviors. In terms of for young people, beginning with a 401k at your first employer that's got a match and understanding how that works is a win. And understanding why the Roth might be a better option for you is a win. And, choosing the right health insurance plan at your company is all those things are little wins.
Yeah. I mean, cash flow is so important too. I think so many people miss that. And I really would like to ask you about the magic number that I see floating around all the time. Because, let me start with a little context. So a lot of times when people get to a standard retirement, they start to worry mostly about like medical expenses. So that's a very common concern, right? And a couple retiring today is estimated to need $330,000 in medical expenses. This was a Fidelity retiree healthcare cost estimate report from last year. And so they see these numbers, they get really nervous about it. But, healthcare is just like any other expense, right? You can figure it out and you can figure out what you'll need there, and you should have that. But so many people, especially in FIRE, the Financial Independence Retire Early movement, have this obsession with the number being the 4% rule. And as a program manager, I really don't love that because it oversimplifies and it can break under stress very easily, because life is not as simple as a constant. No constant will work. And I'm not saying you can't make 4% work, right? You can be your average. It's supposed to be inflation adjusted. But you talk about moving from offense to defense. And I really love that, because a good program manager is a risk manager. You're thinking about the long game. You're thinking about, how do I protect this thing? So what are the specific like defense holes, liability, insurance, estate planning? What are the things someone really needs to be thinking about, which is more than how much money do I need to get into this account so I can withdraw at this percentage, to really know that I played a good defense game?
An ideal financial plan, and I put ideal in quotes because I'm not sure it fully exists, but an ideal financial plan is one that works no matter what. And it can handle the curves along the road, because the life isn't linear. It can handle a period of unemployment or an illness or an accident. It can handle if someone in the family dies tomorrow or if somebody lives to be 106. That's a really tough math problem. And so I think before we even try and start figuring out what are the defensive holes, we have to know that this is not a set it and forget it. It's a monitor it. It's every 6 months or a year, have that physical exam again. You don't get a physical exam when you're 31 and then not again till you're 70. You get one every year, ideally. And it helps you see trends. It helps you take care of yourself. So where are the holes? Well, one of them is typically in risk management. And some of the things in risk management are incredibly easy to fix. Some of them are related to how assets are titled, or how beneficiaries are named, or how documents have been set up, or how your cash emergency fund is set and where it is and how much is it. Some families need 6 months of expenses sitting in cash. Some need 12. Retirees, some of them want 5 years worth. And that's not ridiculous. You talk about the 4% rule, and I agree with you. The 4% rule doesn't work because your inputs are not always the same. If you had an investment that for the rest of time could do 7.5% every year forever, 7.5, 7.5, 7.5, 7.5, and you were pulling out 4, 4, 4, 4, you'd be adjusting for inflation at 3.5 every year. It's brilliant. But we don't get 7.5 every year. There are years where we get 20 and years where we get minus 20, and so it's not that simple. So there are 3 different strategies for the withdrawal rate. And it really does depend on what your net worth is and what your spending needs to be. And you'll notice I avoid the B word. I like to keep things clean. And on my show, the B word is budget. Ugh, I said it. I don't like it. Nobody should say that, because a budget's like diet. Like, you can talk about nutrition, but don't talk about diet. Nobody likes that. So if you know, for example, that based on your nest egg, based on your net worth, that you need a withdrawal rate of, say, 2% to make ends meet, then you have a really good shot at continuing to grow that nest egg, keeping up with inflation, and preparing for whether it's a healthcare emergency or some other emergency or opportunity that comes along. If your withdrawal rate is 4% or so, 4.5, it's time to start talking about asset segregation. You can't use that total return, one big bucket, plenty of excess. Now you have to set some accounts for certain time periods. People call it the bucket strategy. There are lots of different names for it, but the reality is you need money that's available for the short term that's not subject to fluctuation. You need money that's for the next period of years, usually the next 5, where volatility will be low, but then you need the discipline to keep any money that you're unlikely to touch for at least 10 years fully engaged in growth, or you will eventually lose your standard of living.
Yeah.
Now, for folks who have a withdrawal rate at 6 and 7 and 8% in order to live because they haven't saved enough or because their world's too expensive, in addition to trying to cut costs where you can or going back to work, which some people are forced to do, you also have solutions like annuities and other types of things that people don't want and don't like, and they're expensive, but they can solve a problem when you're in that spot sometimes. And, it is a recipe to run out of money. But if you showed up on my doorstep and you said, I've got an 8% withdrawal rate, I don't think this is going to work. And I said, sir, you're 87 years old. If you got 0%, you're good for 15 years and you're not going to get 0%. So you might be okay. Withdrawal rate is by itself just a number. At 88 years old, it might be fine. At 68, it's a disaster because you might have all that time in front of you.
Yeah, I mean, you really need to look at every tool that's available to you to customize your solution to the problem. And you have this area where you talk about questions to determine if you should break up with your financial advisor. And I love that so much for so many reasons. But I actually want to ask you the inverse, because many of my listeners are using complex problems themselves, a little bit of a DIY kind of thing, right? Because of the nuances here that we just covered, when should you know that it's time for a co-pilot? That maybe you might have a blind spot or you might be missing a tool that you should be considering. When would you want someone to think about maybe it's time to go figure out not only if you have a financial advisor, how to break up with them, but like maybe you should start talking to one if you haven't spoken to one before?
Or talking to two or three and figuring out where you're comfortable, all those kinds of things. First of all, your financial advisor has to be the right fit for you in the same way your primary care physician has to be the right fit. And if you're somebody who takes great care of yourself, you're on the treadmill every day and you're eating right and you're keeping your stress right and you're sleeping great and you assume you're in perfect health and you never go to the doctor, there can be things that you miss. This is very similar. I do think anyone with the means to do it should have a financial advisor on some basis. That does not mean you have to hand over all of your financial affairs and have them manage them. Like anything else, it can be extremely high touch or it can be sort of a supplement to do it yourself. Some people want a concierge physician. They want somebody who's going to take care of everything. As a financial advisor, for a client to say, look, we just handle it. Tell us what to do and we'll do it. Take everything. We're happy to do it that way. But we have other folks who say, I just sort of want to make sure I'm on track every year or two. And I'm going to keep managing certain things on my own and let's just get some eyes on it. And if the day ever comes where they don't feel like they can handle it anymore, it's gotten too big or too complex, or they're working two jobs and don't have time, or whatever happens, they'll already have that relationship they can rely on, and they don't have to then shop, particularly under duress, to find somebody to help them. So I think it's okay to get that financial physical, even if it's not every year. Say, where are we really? Are we in good shape? And I've told enough people over my 30 plus years, my gosh, you're doing everything right. You don't need a financial advisor. You might want one, but you don't need one. It's kind of like saying you might want this type of insurance or this type of solution, but you don't need it. It might make you feel better. It might be less responsibility on your end. For your listeners who don't have a financial advisor and who've never used one, I would tell you that a decent financial advisor, and there's a whole list of interview questions in the book. There's a whole chapter dedicated. Here are the questions to ask. And not because one answer is better than the other, but because you have to understand what the answers mean. Financial advisors are tougher to hire than some other professionals because there is no standard and no career path for people to become financial advisors. If you're hiring a doctor, you fully expect they went to med school and they're an MD. If you hire a lawyer, you expect that they've passed the bar and are in fact JDs. Your CPA is either a CPA or he or she's not. But your financial advisor could be somebody who showed up for their first day at work at XYZ Mutual Life Insurance Company, and they've got financial representative on their card, and they're no more adept at it than the guy next door doing anything. So I do think the certified financial planner practitioner is a gold standard, but it's not the only gold standard. There's some other ways. And so understanding what credentials an advisor has, what services they provide, how they're paid, how they work with you, what you can expect from them is very reasonable. And, unfortunately, it's not simple. Most people rely on a friend or a neighbor or another advisor for a referral or a recommendation. And while that's a lovely thing and we consider it an honor to have somebody say, hey, we'd like you to talk to our folks, the truth is you don't know if that recommendation's from somebody who's being really well taken care of or who's in the dark. So I do think it's incumbent upon everybody to really objectively look at their finances and potentially to have somebody else look at them. I have a financial advisor, not because I don't know how to do it, but because emotionally you're connected to your money in a different way. And I wanted somebody else to say, come on, just go do that. And, there are some really good athletes who have coaches and trainers and all those things. Why? They're already great athletes. Well, yes, they want to stay that way. I have a trainer who comes to the house because if I didn't, I wouldn't work out. If I have an appointment, I show up and I lift. If I don't have an appointment, I got stuff to do. Financially, it's very similar.
It's funny you said that because I was going to mention that I've kind of outgrown many financial advisors throughout my time doing it. I actually left 7 different advisors throughout my 20-year program, quite a few.
Wow.
Now, lots of different reasons. Sometimes not the best financial advisors. Sometimes they were amazing. But I just, my needs would change, and I was constantly kind of evaluating that. But I'm actually close to getting my own degree and a wealth management degree and becoming an advisor. And people are surprised to hear that I still have one, that I still go. And because I like to have checkups 2 to 3 times a year on what I'm doing, because to be honest, I don't think anyone can have 0 blind spots. I don't think that's possible. I think you need to find somebody, like you said, that can, stress test some of your stuff and do that for you.
Well, you're a writer, aren't you? You do a lot of writing.
Yeah, I do. Yes.
Who edits your work?
That's a great question. So I actually self-edit, and then I pay for a third-party person to do a final edit pass for me.
Same idea. I can't edit my own work. I love to write, but I need somebody else to read it. Not because when I read my own writing, I'm reading what I think I wrote, and I'm hearing it the way I intended it. I want somebody who's objective to look at that and say, this is the way I took that. And maybe there's some interpretation here, or maybe we got to change the framework a little bit. And not because I don't think I'm a fine writer, but because I can't edit my own work. And I think financially, it's very similar. I think it's really important to have somebody objective who has no skin in the game to be able to say, you really ought to consider this, this, and this. And I'm free to say no, like any client, to say, I realize I should do that, but that's just not, I'm going to self-insure for that, or I'm going to do this differently. But if I go in there knowing that, it's not a financial advisor's job to force you to do anything. It's our job to educate you on and to share options with you and to have you make an educated decision that you're going to live with. Ultimately, it's your money, it's your portfolio, it's your plan. You have to live with the outcomes. We have to try and show you the possible outcomes and help you pick one that makes sense from a risk standpoint, but also from a life standpoint.
Absolutely. I really want to ask you this one last question, and then I want to give you a chance to let the audience know how to connect with you as well, because we covered so much great stuff today. If you could give one piece of advice to someone who's 5 years away from their graduation date to help them best prepare for, 1, celebrating that huge accomplishment, but 2, just knowing that they're going into their post-graduation to live the best possible life they can, what would you tell them?
2 things. From a planning standpoint, I'd say take inventory and start immediately. Make sure you know exactly where you are and not just where you think you are. But on a more psychological standpoint, if you're 5 years from retirement, or what retirement means to you, and you have the bandwidth and the ability to do it, take a month or 2 off. Practice. See what it's like. See what it's like to wake up in the morning, make your coffee, and not have to rush to email or to work or to whatever it is you do. And be thinking about how you might want to spend half of your adult life, which is what retirement can be. Certainly, if we look at the years between 20 and 80 as your most productive adult years, if you're 50, you're at the 50-yard line, no pun intended. I'm on that back nine right now myself, so I get it. Think about how you would want to spend your day, your time, your money, and try it. I get bored after 4 days on vacation. Seriously, if I'm not going like biking down a volcano, I'm going to be bored that day. I got to find something to do. And some people can sit around, I've got all these books I want to read. And maybe that's you, but try it. Get up every day and just read for 2 days, or 5 days or 8 days, or play the video game or play golf twice a day or whatever it is. I think what you'll find is, number one, you'll be yearning for adult communication and meaningful dialogue with people. And you'll be finding ways to volunteer or places to go or things to do that will engage you, because it can be incredibly lonely. Retirement in and of itself, if you're home all day, particularly if you live alone, but even if you're with a spouse who might still be going to work, you'll be bored out of your mind.
That's powerful advice. And I will say, from someone who did that myself, I definitely had a kind of a trial run before mine, and I knew I was ready for it. But yeah, you're right. You never know what it's like until you've been there, because that is a real transition, right? And you always want to be moving forward, never going backwards.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you so much, Eric. This was a fantastic conversation full of a lot of wisdom and insightful things. I really appreciate that. How can listeners connect with you, your podcast, your book? What's the best way?
Well, to check out the podcast and the book and all of our materials, some of which are available for free online, go to bfguniversity.com and you can find all of our materials. And if you want to check us out from a financial planning standpoint and get to know our team and a little bit about us and maybe have that physical exam, bfgfa.com.
Thank you again. We really appreciate it, Eric.
It's been great, Daniel. Thank you.
Today's conversation with Eric Brotman challenged the very vocabulary that we use when we describe our goals. Retirement is a word that commonly elicits an end. It suggests withdrawing from our busy, important lives and going out to pasture. But as we discussed, escaping the clock is not an end. It's a graduation. It is the commencement of the life you've been building toward all along. Reframing it that way can actually help change everything. It can change the way we prepare, and it can move us away from retirement as a passive goal to one with a clearly marked finish line, one that rewards us with the new active life that we designed. Eric spoke about the critical shift from offense to playing defense. During our accumulation years, we're focused on growth, taking risks, and maximizing our returns. But once we graduate, the game changes. It becomes about risk management. Deliberately planning for that shift can reduce the stress, and it can allow us to continue the celebration of our big milestone. He also hit us with some real numbers. Hitting $1 million might feel great, but as Eric points out, that would supply only $40,000 a year to live on. Living on $40,000 can really be hard, especially if you don't do that already. And in 20 years, that $40,000 is going to feel like a lot less, likely $15,000 or so thanks to inflation. So the real number might be as high as 10 million. And a number like that can be very scary. But like we covered, with some discipline and time, you can get to the FI number that actually works. And that will give you the peace of mind to really celebrate that graduation for real. If you feel like this is an impossible task, then I would like to circle back to the concept of a financial editor. We often think that we can DIY everything, but just as a writer cannot effectively edit their own work because we are too close to the story, we often cannot see the flaws in our own financial logic. Even financial advisors have financial advisors because the emotional side of money, it creates blind spots that a spreadsheet can't fix alone. Finding the right fit of advisors can make a huge difference in building the confidence that we need to graduate. And when we graduate, it'll just be the once. And that brings me to the last big piece of advice that Eric hit on, practicing that retirement. I personally took a trial run, and I can tell you, it gave me the confidence that I had been missing. It's easy to dream about endless free time, but until you actually spend a month or two without the structure of a job, you don't know how you'll react to the silence. You have to ensure that you're running toward a new identity, not just running away from an old job. I would love to hear from you. Are you treating your exit like a resignation or as a graduation? Shoot me an email at contact@escapetheclock.com or leave a comment where you listen. Best of luck graduating into your financial freedom and escaping the clock. I'm Daniel C. Rogers. I'll see you next week. Thanks for tuning in to this episode. Remember, while I'm not yet a financial planner, I am getting my degree in wealth management. You should take anything you've heard here as tips and advice to making your plan. To learn more, visit www.escapetheclock.com. There, you can find the book, resources, including the planner, and you can even schedule time with me. Please remember to like and subscribe so you don't miss an episode. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll catch you next time.